I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been doing for IDEs. Yeah, so we certainly care about IDEs, right? We have a bunch of developers, and IDE support is definitely one of the major concerns, and it's definitely an area that doesn't feel like a strength today in the Haxe ecosystem, right? It's an area that could get stronger. There's some IDE support, but it's not, if you compare it to other languages, it's not one of the areas I would say that's a major strength. So we've been using IntelliJ up to this point, but we chose IntelliJ because it had the best Flash plugin support. It wasn't because we had any particular bias to that editor. We also use IntelliJ for Java development, so our backend is in Java, but it doesn't really matter to us if the best, say if Eclipse had the best Flash plugin support, we'd have used Eclipse for the front end development. So today we're still using IntelliJ, and we've been supporting that a little bit by having Eric Bishton, who's worked on the plugin for IntelliJ. So as we see issues, we talk to him, and he tries to work on those plugin issues for us. But we've certainly been seeing, as we come to this conference, and we've heard a little bit beforehand, and Joshua started to look at Visual Studio Code. So we've been trying to see whether or not that's a viable platform for us. And I literally, after hearing about this a little more on Wednesday, I asked the whole team to go off and look at this. So we had 2 or 3 guys go and start playing with Visual Studio Code since the start of this conference, who hadn't looked at it for a while. And the early feedback was it took them a day or 2 to get it actually working, figuring out the configuration, doing all those kind of stuff, but they got it to do that. And the early feedback is that it seems to be working fine for code completion, syntax highlighting, that kind of stuff. Debug support, which is actually one of the problems for IntelliJ 2, doesn't seem to be that good. Maybe because we're just too big of a code base, but when you start up and try and debug in Visual Studio Code, from what I hear, it doesn't immediately connect, and it takes a while before you can actually get into the debugger. So maybe just because our code base is so much bigger than an average project, right? It might work fine for a 5,000 line project, but when you put it onto our code base, which as I mentioned in my talk, is 1 million lines of code, it takes a while. So that's where it stands at the moment. I don't quite know what that means. Whether we have to make the decision, right? Which one do we continue to support? Right? Do we continue to work on the IntelliJ plugin and keep putting some money into that and making that better, or do we recognize where the industry seems to be going and jump over to the other side? So if Visual Studio Code gets just as about as good as IntelliJ, then we will probably make the move, right? I mean, that seems like the obvious thing, because the technological basis, like with the server implementation, it seems like it's a better model, right? Architecturally, it seems like a better model than the IntelliJ plugin works from. So that's good to see. And I guess it's not even actually Visual Studio Code, from what I understand from the talk earlier today. We could choose different IDEs too, but I guess Visual Studio Code is the one that's currently preferred. So yeah, that's where we stand in terms of, I think, our take on the IDEs at this point. I don't know what that means. I mean, do we just keep talking about it?
I guess. Yeah. So hi, my name is Simon, and I'm using IDEs too. And
Hi, welcome, Simon. 12 steps of IDE.
yeah. So what I'm trying to do is, because I work on the compiler, I try to find solutions that work in several scenarios and for multiple IDEs, and that's why I picked up on the VS Haxe thing that Dan started, because it makes a lot of sense to me to have one layer that can be reused in other IDEs. And I think that's a good way forward, because we can implement a lot of stuff inside Haxe, have an abstraction layer on top of that, which uses that, and then have IDEs connect to that. We mostly work on Visual Studio Code right now because we kind of like it, but I don't really see a way why other IDEs couldn't pick up on that. And I mean, of course, it requires some work. You have to build some adapters and figure out some things, and probably write us some bug reports because we didn't consider it, but it's certainly possible, and I think the way we're doing it right now is definitely the right way.
Yeah, I think there are already language server clients for Vim and I think Eclipse as well. So if you are into these editors, maybe we could figure it out together and connect it to our language server that we developed for VS Code, and maybe also Flash Develop could make use of it. So yeah, it's a right architecture. Don't know what to say.
I can give some update about Flash Develop. So I personally haven't worked much on it in the last few years. It's been picked up by Hector, who had to go this time, so the project still has a few contributors. There's been a few lows in activity, but it's back with 3-4 contributors. The new language features from the compiler are being used. It may not be using the language server abstraction, so it's using directly the display mode, and the situation seems to be that it's a definite improvement and going in a good direction, but it's lacking, let's say, robustness maybe, and handling cases like actual multilingual projects with a lot of if, else, different targets. So that problem with targets, there are a few problems with the service getting into an infinite loop. But so we're definitely going in this direction, and there will be soon new releases with new features. Still with more refactoring, although we believe that we need to get to a point where the compiler also provides us the refactoring features. More work for you, Simon. Yes, and in terms of debugging, so Hector had experimented with JavaScript debugging integration, had something working mostly, but it is quite insufficient when you debug in the browser, because you cannot do, for instance, DOM inspection at the same time. You cannot open the Chrome debugger tool, for instance, to do to inspect elements, inspect CSS, if you are connected to the remote debugger in your IDE, which means it limits a lot the kind of thing you can do. So, though it's certainly worth for Node.js, for instance, or it would be for debugging macros or debugging, whatever new targets, hash link. So it's probably going to resume on our side as well, but we'll be probably looking at using an abstraction this time. So looking to integrate JavaScript scripting for plugins in Flash Develop to make that easier.
Just to put some perspective on the whole thing. Since X started, I guess IDE has always been some kind of problem, and at X Foundation we kind of left it to up to the community to deal with it somehow, because we didn't have the focus on that. We were adding new targets, fixing the bugs, improving the performance of the compiler, and so there were actually very good initiatives like the IntelliJ came from the community, like XDevelop too. So there were actual solutions. I mean, not perfect ones, but there were some solutions provided by the community. And but I think it's changed a bit, maybe with Visual Studio Code came up, and we were able to actually one of the problems with IDE support was we had to write it not in Haxe. I guess that wasn't a big showstopper for us to kind of contribute to it. So so know that with Visual Studio Code we have a way to write Haxe to improve the audio experience. That's definitely been helpful to do more work on our side for this, and that's a big focus we have been having for a few months already. It's not very long. I mean, how long I've been doing maybe 1 year or something.
Yeah, I think it's more than 1 year.
Around 1 year. So yeah, and so I think that's a really big focus we have right now, and a high priority for Haxe Foundation to do more work in that area. And one of the things we don't know yet is how well it will hold for large code base. So one thing we need you to do is to try things out, and not try to switch your whole team to Visual Studio Code right away, but open it up, try to set up, take the time to look at it, and see if it works for you. What are the issues you're getting into, and open issues on our GitHub. Sorry about it, but so we can try to figure out what are the issues you're facing, because depending on your workflow, depending on your code bed size, depending on your platform you target, you might have different issues. That's the one we are actually looking at, and that's interesting to have. I'm as wide feedback as possible on this. And that's what I'm doing. For instance, I haven't been switched. I'm still using Haxe Develop personally, and my team too. But I'm switching like to Flash Develop, to Visual Studio Code every month or so, and checking the new things and opening a few issues and going back to Haxe Develop until I'm satisfied. At some point, I will just stop doing that, and because everything will be okay for me and my team. But I think you should do the same, and it will be really helpful to move things forward in a faster way, because there's many things to do and little time, that's right, but I think having actual reports, the best reports is not like just a few words about it, but the best reports are not opening an issue and saying, okay, I tried to open my project and it crashed. That's not really helpful. That's some kind of feedback, but we can't really do much about it just this way. So you have to kind of help us figure it out, what's going wrong, in this specific scenario. The best thing we can ask for is some reproducible sample when you have one project and maybe one or two files, and when you're using this specific with as little code as possible, and saying, okay, when I do that with this specific files, it's kind of crash, or it cannot, print the wrong thing, or it doesn't do anything what it should. Just give us some like really small code. I know it takes time, because you have to, of course, when you start, you open up your whole project, and then something that doesn't work. So you need to take out out of the whole context and try to reduce it as much as possible. So it's not always easy, and it takes a bit of time on your time, but that's one way you can really help us improve for everyone. I mean, if you all do this like once, and we get like 20 reproducible samples, or 30 or 40 of them, then it means it's as much bugs and as much improvement we made for everyone. So that's really something, if you can spend some time doing that correctly, and it will really help us improving the quality in tremendous ways. So that's one thing we want to. I'm insisting you to please help us in this way.
And I would like to add that we often hear that people don't contribute to the compiler itself because it's written in OCaml. And in that regard, the language server and VS Haxe are both written in Haxe. And we think we didn't make the code base too terrible. So if you feel like you want to check out how we did it and maybe can help and at least look at it, then please do so. So are we taking questions now? Yeah, okay.
Can we ask a question? Can I ask a question before we do that? Can I ask what today people are using, right? I mean, we've got a nice sample of Haxe Develop. Is like who today is using Visual Studio Code to develop? Okay, so that's about maybe like 10, something like that. Okay, who's using then Haxe Develop, I guess, right? So maybe a few more. Maybe that's like a dozen. Who else is anyone using IntelliJ except for us? Yeah, okay. Oh, even then, so about so like 3 pretty even groups at this point, right? I would say. I mean, that's yeah. What else? Yes. What else? So yes. What else is Flash Develop? Is that different from Haxe Develop? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Same thing, right? Yeah. Anything else? Notepad, yeah, okay, whatever. Yeah. Okay, all right. So that's, or at least we know what the major players are, which is we're working on the right sector.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like evenly split.
Perfectly evenly split. Yeah. Okay. So, all right.
Yeah, we had this discussion. I think it was yesterday, about should we entirely kind of forget about IntelliJ and focus really on Visual Studio Code. So I want to hear about IntelliJ users, if they feel like you That because you say that if Visual Studio Code has best support, then you're okay to switch. Is that the same case for every IntelliJ users out there, or is it something like you really need some IntelliJ switchers and you will never switch to Visual Studio Code? Okay, and what's the concerns? I want to hear why. So. Okay, so yeah, I repeat for those. In your case, you still have ActionSheet project, so using two IDEs that was out of question, and switching, you need to switch between the two, and okay, get it. Was that like, maybe you can come forward with a microphone, maybe better, to everybody can hear this way.
Hi, at Happy Technologies, we use, sorry, I'm old. We use IntelliJ and Sublime Text, and also VS Code to develop with SCAD Haxe Code. In fact, each people can choose their own code editor with their feelings. The best editor for them to be efficient and deliver very well, etc. In my case, I love IntelliJ. The Haxe plugin is really cool, and for me much better than VS Code today, because we have automatically import, indentation, the completion is pretty cool, many code generator, etc. It's a full tool to quickly product Haxe code. But the main problem is that in some big company, you developers does not have the choice of their code editor. Which means some great company choose IntelliJ, for example, for all their developers. So it's not about making all of our energy to in just one editor, but we still, I think the community has to maintain all of them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I would say what the company that maybe adopts X will get the best for the team, hopefully. But well, that's a other like commentary on the, yeah, maybe you can come forward. Yeah.
I mean, so I kind of have or my thinking about that is, like, I've been a long time Flash Develop user and fan, one of the first sponsors. But at some point I moved towards VS Code because it's cross-platform mostly, and I saw that the compiler team was actually, working to support it. And I think regardless of if we get IntelliJ support to be better, I mean, there's no reason not to do it, of course. But on the other hand, like, maybe endorse one thing that works well out of the box, so that when people, like, I mean, when you want to develop with Swift, then you're kind of stuck with, or maybe Objective-C, you're kind of stuck with Xcode, like nobody's going to say, how do I do this in Eclipse? Or, I mean, you can, but you're going to suffer. And I think, like, getting it right in one thing and saying this is the advice and this is how it could work, and saying, like, this is the advertised thing, and then, then take care of the rest. Because, I mean, the better your workflow, the easier it is for people to get up and running and see this is a fine technology and we want to commit to that. And then they realize, okay, but we still want to use our old tools. But you already kind of have them, in your hand, and then they are more willing to actually fix it for their stuff. That's what I think. Sorry? Yeah. I mean, really purely for newcomers. Just click and ideally like IDE plus Haxe and go.
I don't disagree with that, but I think it should be kind of like a first step. If we say we focus on Visual Studio Code right now, which we already do, basically, but we do it in a way where it can be leveraged, as I said. So when we in a situation where we are confident that it works and we're happy with the protocol, and then we just say, okay, this works. Now use it to make IntelliJ better. And I see no reason why that wouldn't work.
No,
So
I mean, the thing is, like, I go on the Haxe website,
yeah.
I don't know what it is, and I want to see like a button, like
Yeah.
step 1, step 2, and now code and have fun.
Yeah, that was kind of what Haxe Develop was supposed to be, right? Like the use this to get started thing. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's not cross-platform. That's a big issue. Yeah.
VS Code would be a better, a recommendation.
Just try it out of the box, and then if you're not happy with it, go find something else.
So in our company, we are open to any IDE, but currently we can't use VS Haxe because it's not working with Haxe 2. But when we move to Haxe 3, yeah, definitely we will use it. But it's I have an open question to all of us. IntelliJ IDEA supports Flash from the box, but it's paid version. So is there a way to somehow get official support from JetBrains about it?
Originally it started a bit as an experiment in JetBrains, I think. I didn't follow the whole thing, but yeah. And then I think at some point TiVo, which a company partner, they contact JetBrains because JetBrains stopped they just did an initial thing and then they stopped, and so TiVo got back the code and was able to improve things further. So JetBrains did kind of try, and at some point they stopped for reasons I'm not familiar with. Maybe Haxe is not in their priority, which we can decide on. And so that's a bit the story of the project. It was first inside JetBrains and then out, taken by TiVo and sponsored by X Foundation. We sponsor some work on it, like Eric work on it. And now Eric has raised TiVo for other reasons, and Flowplay is sponsoring Eric to work on IntelliJ. So while there's still been some work on IntelliJ, like regular work on it from some times already, but I mean not much interaction with compiler team so far. But we can improve that. Also, it's a bit complex because, for instance, they say that they won't support the language server protocol, which is the one used by VS Code. So because they have their kind of own way of doing things when they parse the word IST and they use it for refactoring and everything. So it's really like things like I don't know, I'm not familiar with the inners of it. I can't code any word in the IntelliJ plugin, but it's quite particular and quite specific to IntelliJ. So it's not like we can reuse a lot of things we are doing for VS Code on IntelliJ, but IntelliJ could use the compiler service that we are providing. I mean, the plugin could use the compiler service and integrate better with this. That's for sure. Yeah. So yeah, other things about IntelliJ, about the original question, but yeah, sure.
What bothers me is that IntelliJ has very, very fast cloud navigation capabilities and the text search all over the project. And in a large code basis, that's a critical feature. And in VS Code, I use it for my hobby libraries, for compiler, but I feel like I won't be able to navigate through my code for the Playticus projects, for example. Even if VS Code works great, it still will be very slow in searching across a code base. So but that's the thing which bothers me. I just wanted to say.
That's good to know. That would be a major concern for us too.
Any other things for the?
I'm not gonna
Sure, sure.
speak up. I think one of the big things with a big code base is you start having to manage and isolate your dependencies and what you can and can't access from different places. Sort of like a multi-modular or multi-project type setup. What is the proposed workflow with VS Code in a situation like that?
Actually, the VS Code team are developing. They are developing this multi-root workspace thing. It's already in the insiders builds, and it's be available soonish. And we are looking into supporting it in VS Haxe. It will require some changes because there will be now many projects in one workspace, but it will be there soon.
Okay, so it's on the cards.
I'll just speak up also. We had the same case as Playtika. Sometimes our workbase has 10,000 classes, like 5,000 from ActionScript, 5,000 from X, plus the huge monolithic JavaScript file that is generated. VS Code just crashes. It can't handle that type of stuff. So for us, it's not slow. It just crashes.
So yeah, well, there seems to be some consensus on this. That like VS Code in its current state, we don't know what Microsoft will come up in the future, but is not maybe the best solution for large code base for various reasons. And okay, I mean that gives us already some idea that we should maybe continue supporting the whole IntelliJ thing and while focusing a lot of also for the new things we're working on, like compiler support, keep focusing on VS Code and get it adopted at the later stage in IntelliJ to improve the support. Are you satisfied with IntelliJ X compiler support, or I mean like X support as a whole, or is it just not good enough for you?
We could have more stuff like code generation. We could read the project files to automatically add dependencies, things like that would be awesome. And besides that, having to debugger support would be probably the most conceptual.
Yeah, for debugger support, I think we agree on the team to kind of try to merge our efforts to kind of provide a single front end service for various platforms, at least for Ashlink and AccessCPP and maybe a few others macros, and have a single front end and protocol, so that the idea you have only one thing to do to support all of them. I mean, at least these three and maybe more in the future. So maybe we could integrate later, like Lua debugging or these kind of things. I mean, in the future. So, well, that's the kind of thing we are the step where we kind of will figure it out and implement first in VS Code, and then later it can be reused in IntelliJ, for instance. So, yeah.
Yeah, but you're targeting JavaScript, right? And I think IntelliJ IDEA supports the JavaScript debugging, and there's a
WebStorm, yes, but sometimes we also want to debug the Axe itself.
yeah, I get that, but
In converter and things like that, we work directly in Axe. There is no direct output to it.
That's Nico.
Yeah, we use C++ sometimes. We just convert it to C++, and but while trying to debug it to work on it directly, it will be much more sense to
yeah,
actually
yeah.
debug in Axe.
I mean, there are source maps for JavaScript, and I think IntelliJ should support this. I think it supports this.
But the conversion tool in that particular case was not compiled to JavaScript.
I mean, the converter itself, which is written in Haxe, is compiled to C++.
Okay.
And then if we extend the converter, of course, we
So you want to debug the converter? I see. Maybe.
try to run on none.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you try running the converter on Node and?
I mean, we tried different things, right? There was one thing that we tried it to bring it to Java, which was not working because what we already said that obviously the Java target
Yeah.
is differently than the C++ target.
But
But that's a different issue, right?
Well, it's quite specific. Yeah, let's maybe move forward with.
I'm a bit confused about that because TiVo was working on the HXCPP debugger and they were using IntelliJ IDEA too, so I kind of assumed that it would work with that IDE, so I don't really see why it wouldn't.
Maybe
Mm.
it works now.
Mm.
I'm not sure. I mean,
Mm.
as said, so the converter improvements were already a while ago.
Mm.
But during that time, there was also the C++ debugger target, and that was working from the command line. And then there was also Visual Studio
Mhm.
plugin, and then you could debug that from Visual Studio. Kind of, it was okay-ish, but still in the end, it was more like I don't know, printf debugging to find out and including it. So it was not really perfect workflow for us. It was something was possible, some things were not really possible, and yeah, it worked out in the end, but yeah, it's not the best possible experience.
Yeah, it's not like debugging Java or debugging directly action script or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first debuggers we used it was command line, and it was something manually adding breakpoints via console. I mean, it's not exactly the same as full debugger, if you want.
Say something.
Well, for debuggers, I'm using a lot the Visual Studio C++ debugger, which is not Visual Studio Code. So I think it's one maybe of the best debugger for a long time already. So I make sure to tell them to get the same results. Better. Yeah.
Not a question, but maybe just a quick note on VS Code. It's actively really developed. Microsoft ships a new version every month. A lot of commit in each, a lot of issue gets resolved. So it seems really like a good option for the future. I think most of the issues we have with it can be resolved if we report it to them. So, like Nicolas said, if something doesn't work with VS Haxe, report it, and maybe it's a VS Code issue, we can report it, and we have reported a couple of them, and they got fixed. They're really responsive, so I think we can see good improvements in the editor itself.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think VS Code scope is maybe for like smaller projects, kind of. Well, we'll see, but I think the way they design the things is more. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
I have more question. I'm not using VS Code yet.
I know.
But sorry. But yeah, I'm using Haxe, and what Haxe has is you can create so-called macros, which are C# code, and which are very useful to automate some of your workflow things. So for some of our games, we had a lot of stuff that could happen or should be done, and with you can easily extend the editor by writing simple macro scripts or and that's really nice, and and you can also create some interface elements for that, so that was also useful for game designers and quick thing. Is there something for Visual Studio Code, and how does it work?
Yeah, there's an extension API, and there's Haxe extends for that. You can just create your own extension, as I said in my talk. Yeah.
But I'm sorry, just building on Mark's idea, could we maybe have something where you don't have to have the extension and learn about how to load it into the editor or something like that, but have an extension that just consumes a snippet of hex code that is compiled to JavaScript against the externs, and you can just run it real quick and hack on it, you know? So sorry? Okay, well, yeah, but maybe that would work for you, like something of that kind? So you can just write a bit of hex code and without bothering to actually make an extension and put it to some marketplace.
I wouldn't mind to create an extension.
Ah,
that
okay.
is
If that's
simple,
yeah.
and if there are
It's actually
visual-
Yeah, but it's a good idea regardless, I think. Should be feasible, yeah.
that would be nice. So and that's also important for me. When you're using an editor, it should be extendable.
It is.
And also visual. So you can create panels or I don't know.
Where it gets difficult, I think.
Yeah.
They don't like that.
Yeah.
I like it.
A note on that, I have used the VS Code extension API, and it's not complex. You can make one really quickly. There are got samples, example in Haxe, and all you need is using the externs. You need to annotate the main function, if I'm not mistaken, to tell it it's the entry point, and then you need a package.json file, which tell it your name, the name of the extension, and the name of the output JavaScript file. And inside VS Code, when you're doing the extension, you can debug it. You'll open a new VS Code with your extension running, so it's quite an easy workflow.
I think we okay.
Yeah. I think we're done.
Any more questions maybe or remark? Why? Okay.
Thank you, everyone.